This incident took place on a Monday, when the mailman would always deliver our packages. But this day, I did not want to come true, but sadly, it did. I remember one morning, on a Monday, I was outside taking my dog for a walk. I would take my dog for a walk almost every single day because of the type of breed dog I had, which was a gray and white husky, named Jack. After arriving home and putting my dog up in the house, as I began to open up my front door, and as I was opening my front door, I could hear the mailman vehicle start to approach my mailbox. As I ignored what the mailman was doing and began to shut my door, after a few minutes went by, I waited for the mailman to drive away so I could walk to the end of my driveway and see what the mailman was doing, because I was receiving a package, which I have not ordered nothing recently. I was in shock when I opened my mailbox to see I had a tiny box that was wrapped in Christmas wrapping you would see. This was strange, I thought to myself, as I began to grab the box out of my mailbox and began to make my way back into my house. As I arrived at my house, I began to open up the box that was left inside my mailbox. After unwrapping the wrapping paper, I began to check what was inside the box. As I began to open up the box and check what was inside, my face began to turn red as I saw a note that said, "Check your phone." I then reached in my pocket and checked my phone and received a text message. I had received a text message from an unknown number which had sent me a link, which I began to click on, not even thinking what this could be. As I opened the link, I was terrified. It was a horror disturbing video. It was a younger woman who was chained up inside a basement. It looked like the younger woman had to be in her 20s. As I began to try and investigate the video much more, I could see that the younger woman was crying, saying, "Let me go." As I began to keep watching, I saw a man open the door, who was dressed up in a mailman uniform it looked like, and was making his way towards the younger woman. As I kept watching, I could see the woman's face. She looked terrified. As the mailman began to start beating on her, I began to try to click off the video and call 911, but I could not click off the video. I was confused because this was my phone. How could my phone get hacked from only knowing my number? I began trying hard resetting my phone, even restarting my phone, but nothing would work. I did not want to watch this poor woman get tortured by this mailman. So after trying to do everything in my power to get this video off my phone, I began to go to my neighbor's house and ask if I could borrow their phone. As my neighbor was polite and actually let me borrow their phone, I began to dial 911 and told the cops that there is a young woman who is going to die. She needs help, but I do not know how to get to her. I have the video. Please get her. The cops then replied saying that they were confused and that they would be on their way to get better understanding. As I waited for the cops, I could still hear the younger woman's voice, tears as the cops arrived. I began to show the cops the video. As we began to watch the terrifying video, the video then ended. I could see that the man had killed the woman and was recording this as if it was a sick joke or something. As the mailman began and could see that the cops were watching through my phone camera, he then replied with a video clip of him killing this innocent woman. As the cops and I began to watch this video on my phone, the mailman guy could see that the woman was crying after he beat her. After the mailman beat the woman, he then began and pulled out an axe. He started to cut the woman's hands off and feet, leaving blood go everywhere. You could hear the woman scream of pain and crying. The man began and grabbed some tape and wrapped it around the woman's mouth. As the man then pulled out a knife, which was a kitchen knife, and slit into the woman's ribcage, letting her bleed out, the mailman would drive the knife deeper and deeper into the woman's ribcage, letting her bleed out. I could see in the video the woman's face with tears coming down her eyes as she bled out. The man then grabbed a saw and cut the woman's head off, leaving her headless. And then the mailman ended the video and put, "Thanks for watching, Jeff." As I began and collapsed to the ground, the police officer called a tech guy over there. The tech guy began to hook my phone up to a laptop and began to search for this crazy psycho guy. After a few minutes of searching, the police then reset my phone and erased everything, and then began to leave as they went to go catch this guy. A day later, I was at home watching the news when I saw that the man who did the killing was arrested. He worked as a mailman. He was hired not too long ago. This man was not scared because he got caught. But this scared me. It did not take a lot of effort for this man to get caught or even get my number. As I was relieved that the cops had caught this guy, I began to turn off the news and went to change my number and begin to find a new place to live. The scary part about life is you always have to watch your surroundings because you could be dead less than a second, if not. And I'm happy that I was not the next mailman's next victim. It has now been 3 months that I have been living on my own. I moved out of my parents' house not too long ago. A few years back when I was working as a cashier at a grocery store, I was living with some roommates from college. After getting laid off work due to having too many employees, I was home alone a lot while everyone was working. I would be job hunting, trying to get another job. Every Monday, the mailman would always pass by my house, dropping off packages that my roommates would order, or even mail. This gave me an idea. Why don't I apply to be a mailman delivery driver? As I began to open up my laptop and apply to be a delivery driver, I began to hear a knock at the door. I went downstairs to look out the window just to see it was a mailman. I did not think nothing of it because I opened up the door and seen that the mailman was holding a paper that needed to be signed by my roommate, Greg. I told the mailman that Greg was not here and I could let him know that you stopped by. As the mailman then began to understand and began to walk off, he went to the end of my driveway and then got in his vehicle and drove away. I went back upstairs and kept applying for the mailman job position. As I waited patiently for a couple of hours, I got an email from the mailman company that I was applying for, which said, "You have been accepted." I was so happy and relieved. I started to ask, when do I start? After getting all the information I need, I began to call my friend Greg and told him that I have a job and I am a mailman, and that the mailman also stopped by and he needs your signature. After that, I waited for the next morning to start my job as a mailman. As I began to put my work clothes on, I went outside to open my car door and drove to my job. As I arrived to the post office, I began to tell the front desk that I'm new. I got an email from this company. The front desk then replied, "Oh yeah, I remember you. Go back there, we'll get you situated. We'll get you a uniform and everything." I began and walked back through the post office, and I got into my uniform. After the mailman guy who normally drops off my packages then began to come over to me and said, "First day, huh?" I replied, "Yes it is, sir." The mailman guy name was Tom, which was the mail truck guy who would always come at my house. After Tom showed me around the post office, we then went to the vehicle. Tom then said, "Do not leave here, I will be back." I waited, but that was a creep. I was kind of creeped out by the tone of his voice. Tom's voice was kind of creepy. But I did not overthink this situation. As Tom got back into the mail truck, we began to drive off. After a couple of houses dropping off packages, Tom then asked, "Would you be down to kill some people?" I looked at Tom with a dead, scared face and replied, "No, Tom." I replied with that and thought that Tom was joking. At least I was hoping. Tom then looked at me as if he was disappointed or something for me not wanting to kill. We then pulled up to these people's house after dropping off packages for a little while. It was a big yard, green yard. It was huge, with blue and yellow house. Also had green on the side. Tom looked at me and said, "This is our first victim." As Tom shut the door, I began to get worried and started to call 911, telling the cops that this mailman Tom was going to kill people, I think. As the police asked, "Where are you located, sir?" I began to tell the cops, "I'm on Birchfield Valley." As the cops then said we are on our way, I felt horrible for not going in the house with Tom, but I did not want to die. As the cops began to arrive, I could hear the cop sirens from a couple of blocks away. The cops then got there and started to investigate the house. The cops found 2 bodies, which was dead bodies, which had their hearts craved out of their chests, and a note by the bodies which said, "You were too late." As I saw the cops bring the dead bodies to the ambulance, I could see out the window Tom was running from the woods. I began to tell the cops, "There he is." As the cops began to go over after Tom, Tom was caught and was charged with murder and all other types of charges that he did back in the day. I cannot believe Tom was a killer. And the lesson from this story is you can never know when someone is a good person or a bad person, even at work or even on the job. When I was a younger boy, I would always watch the mailman truck drive by my house every single day, and there would always be a package that he would drop by. I remember the excitement I would always get from a package I got delivered to my house. I never knew why I was excited, but I was a kid, and I was. Until one day, outside playing with my toys, on a Monday evening, which I was only 13 at the time, I could hear and see a mailman truck pull up towards my mailbox. As I was not alone, my mom was outside with me. As she began to get a call from work, I suppose, my mom then began and got out of my sight, and went into the house, not realizing I was still outside. I was not scared at the moment because it was sunny outside. It was sunny outside, and the mailman was outside, which I thought was a good person. At least, that's what I thought. As I saw a mailman get out of this vehicle and start making his way towards me, holding what looked like a package box, the mailman then asked, "Hey kid, can you help me carry this box? It's a little too heavy for one person to carry." I was a little scared to help the mailman with the box, despite all my excitement I would get when the mailman would come. I ignored the mailman, as the mailman then began and dropped the box and started to chase after me. I began to run to the front door and started to scream, hoping that someone would hear me. I could see my mom through the window, on the phone still in the kitchen, as the mailman grabbed me by my arm and yanked me really hard. As I was about to be taken by the mailman, my mom then began to come to the door. As my mom opened the door and yelled, "Hey, put my son down, you hear me?" The mailman then began to drop me and drove away. My mom then started to ask if I was okay, if he did anything to hurt me. As my mom then apologized, she began to call the cops. When my mom was on the phone with the cops explaining what happened, the cops was right behind the mailman, who was driving, and began to arrest the man. After the cops arrested the mailman, I never went up to the mailman since because of this incident,